Bam! I know you're probably expecting this to be a review of the new Psychic Awakening book that came out, but the fact is, all I've got here is this totally normal, boring, not the beginning of a huge event book. But I'll do a book report on it anyway, because I figure you guys should know about it. JK, it's totally the Phoenix Rising Psychic Awakening book that we've got here. So let's check this out, see what's going on inside, see that the Xenos factions are now starting to get a little bit of love, which is fun. And it's also the beginning of the Psychic Awakening campaign that they've got going on now. So it's kind of cool to see that all starting up here. So it's a nice book, like all of them. Goes through all of the new story here, which is really interesting. I'm not going to go through it. I don't want to ruin the actual story that they've got going in here. We'll go over some more of the rules, which I think people are interested in, because if you're interested in the story, I really highly recommend getting the book. It's a cool story, and I think it'll be interesting to go through. They also have a bunch of missions, which we'll look at, and it's just kind of interesting. So I think it's going to be cool, and let's go through this now. So going through it, like I said, the story that they've got going on here is really cool. It kind of goes through a lot of what's going on with the Eldar perspective on everything going on, because the Cicatrix Maledictum, a lot of the information that we've come out with novels and things that we've been reading have been about the Imperial reaction to it, and obviously the Chaos reaction to it too, since they kind of caused it. But this goes through more of what's going on with our pointy-eared brethren that are dealing with the same thing that's going on here. So it'll be interesting to see kind of what goes on with this. But they've got a bunch of the different, they just kind of go through it, just about the different things that are going on here, which is really interesting. Beautiful art as always, and a cool story to check it out. So let's check out some of the missions that they've got going on here. They got Echoes of War missions, and so they've got the different things they have. So they got like Theaters of War, the Maiden World, so you've got rules for fighting on in the different areas. So like for here, Theater of War, Maiden World, Vigor of Spirit World. At the end of your movement phase, you can reroll 1d6 for each non-vehicle unit from your army that is on the battlefield. On a 6+, you can select one model in that unit to regain one lost wound, which is pretty cool since they're on there. If there's not a model in your unit that has lost any wounds, but any models from your unit have been destroyed, roll 1d6. On a 4+, you can return one of those models to the battlefield with one wound remaining, placing it in unit coherency. So it's basically like the effects of like an apothecary at the end there on a 6+, and then a 4+ again, you can get one back. So it's kind of cool that you can do that. And then Despoil Paradise, when a vehicle model explodes, if there are any Aeldari character models on the battlefield, randomly determine one of them and roll 1d6, adding 1 if the vehicle model has the Aeldari keyword. If the vehicle model is an Aeldari building, add 2 to the roll instead. On a 5+, the character model is driven into a rage by the destruction visited upon the Maiden World. Add 1 to its strength and attacks characteristic until the end of the battle. So it's kind of cool. It's just like the build-up of what's going on. They've got high altitude rules here. So it's a bunch of different ways to play the games, which is kind of interesting. The idea is that you can play along with kind of what's been going on with the narrative here, which is really interesting. So we've got Sky Strike here, dealing with the different missions. So that, they're going to come with their own bespoke stratagems, their own situations. So it's Echoes of War, which is more of their narrative driven kind of battles. This is not the kind of thing that you're going to find at LVO, but it'll be I really think it'll be a fun way to play through what's kind of going through with everything here. So they've got Bitter Reversal, Confrontation, and again, all of those things, all those stratagems and things, there's bespoke for those missions, which is kind of cool. So I kind of like that about these new supplements. They don't have this in the Space Marine supplements, but these kind of the books they had, like Vigilus and whatnot, where they have the missions as well as extra rules that kind of come in with your army, which is fun and interesting. So now we're going to go into the Craftworld's rules, going through here. So they do have point values, although the point values don't look like they've changed much or at all, I should say, from the rules from the points that they've had for these characters and the Howling Banshees specifically, and their weaponry and stuff hasn't changed since from the way the rules had been, but that's what they've got now. So, but they've got updated data sheets. So basically allows them to find out, you've got these new ways of running that, which is interesting. So you got a name generator here, which is always fun to have. So they've got Giant Czar, the character model. They've got a brand new model that came out with the Blood of the Phoenix box set that came out. So you've got the brand new plastic model for her, which came out, which is really interesting. And her rules are cool. Mostly, it seems, looking through her rules, that she's going to be really designed for kind of culling down hordes, because she gets to make her attack characteristic is either a base of 4, or you can choose for it to be any number of enemy models within 2 inches of her after all the pylons, after the pylon has been made. So basically, you drop her into the middle of a big horde of like orcs, or a big horde of gene stealers or something like that, and she'll just get to go to town with her attacks that she's got going on there, which is really kind of fun and interesting way to run her. And she's got the Silent Death, which is her Assault 4 ranged weapon, but it's strength user because it's her throwing her her 3-bladed whatever thingy. And then you got the Blade of Destruction, which is strength +2, AP -3. Both of them are AP -3 and D3 damage. When resolving an attack made with this weapon, you can reroll the wound roll, which is kind of cool. So that's an interesting way of going through there. I think she's going to be kind of interesting. You're not going to see her kind of going face to face against something like a Smash Captain or anything like that, but you will see her getting stuck in and doing a lot of damage. Once you have AP -3, you can cull hordes like none other with her, and I think that's what she's going to be very good at, or taking on kind of with the D3 damage. I think she could do a pretty good job against Marines. So if you get stuck into a group of Marines, she could do a pretty good number on them. But once you start getting into invul saves and things like that, she's not as tough. She doesn't have an invul save. So I think going like face to face with a Smash Captain with his 3-up invul save and a sledgehammer that's going to whack her in the face, it's going to be hard for her to stand up against it. But against other characters that are not quite as good, or not quite as, I should say, resilient, because she's got a strength 4, so she's got like the same strength basically as Marines and stuff like that. And strength +2 means she's attacking at strength 6, so she can do a number on whatever she runs into there. But the fact is if she's not going to be quite as resilient as some of the other characters that are out there with their invul saves. Essentially, invul saves, and the fact that she is the tough 4, so you got Marine stats going on there. So it mostly comes down to that invul save. She does have a 2-up armor save, so I don't know. Maybe I'm overreacting a bit too much. I'm just used to getting smacked in the face by power fists and thunder hammers. So she doesn't want to get that, but she can go in and handle her own against pretty much anything else there. So and she's going to have a save on everything up until AP -5. So, I guess maybe I'm overreacting. Maybe she could go in there and hold her own, because against that she'll have a 5-up save against a Thunderhammer, and then he'll have a 3-up save, I guess, and he'll have more attacks. But I don't know, with the D3 damage, it's pretty good. I think she could be a real beat stick, which would be interesting to see how she goes there. And then going into the Howling Banshees, I think not much has changed, I don't think. With them too much. I guess their weapons may have changed a bit. No, I don't even know if they really changed that much, but they've got the usual stuff that they have. But the reason they've got them in here is because the models, they've got the new kit, the plastic kit that comes with that there. So it'll be interesting to see how they handle. I think, given some of the other rules you're going to see in a bit, that I think that these aspect warriors are going to be doing a bit more work for our pointy-eared brethren than they have in the past, which is kind of interesting. I think it'll be fun to do. Speaking of, we've got powers of the aspect shrines. So essentially what this is going to allow you to do is change out the special rules. So for instance, here, we'll look here. So we've got the Howling Banshees. They've got Ancient Doom as one of their special rules here, and I believe that's the one that gets changed out here. We'll go here, and I'll come back and talk to all of them in a second. No, they can replace Warshout. So they've got Warshout here. If this unit contains Howling Banshee and Exarch, then when resolving an attack made with a melee weapon against this unit, subtract 1 from the hit roll. So that's what they've got, the Warshout there. But what these rules here, so powers of the Aspect Shrine, what they allow you to do is give you an alternative way for your Exarchs from them to benefit there. So you got the Exarch in here, you get -1 to subtract 1 from hit rolls against them from melee weapons. But you can also change it out now for this whole list of different rules that they've got here. So, for instance, for them, you've got Graceful Avoidance, which you can change that out for. Whilst this unit contains a Howling Banshees Exarch, when a model in this unit would lose a wound in the fight phase, roll a d6 on a 5+, that wound is not lost. So essentially, you're trading out -1 to hit for a 5-up Feel No Pain. Or you can do, when this unit is chosen to fight with a Howling Banshee Exarch in this unit that is equipped with an Executioner, they can make a Piercing Strike. If they do, until the end of the phase, subtract 1 from the attacks characteristic and add 3 to the strength characteristic of that Howling Banshee Exarch, and that Executioner has a damage characteristic of 3. So essentially this gives you the ability to go against the usual targets that Howling Banshees are going for, but if you run into something tougher with more wounds specifically, you can go and take them out there, which I think is pretty cool. And it's... you can just choose this for each of the different... So if you have multiple units, you can choose different ones. They've got Disarming Strike. At the start of the fight phase, you can select one enemy model within 1 inch of this unit's Howling Banshee Exarch. Subtract 2 from the attacks characteristic of that enemy model to a minimum of 1 until the end of that phase. So essentially, you can have that where if you want to run them into... go in and surround a character, you can go in and be like, all right, well, now you have 2 less attacks in there. Which makes a big deal because a lot of the characters that you're going to be fighting against really depend upon the number of attacks that they get to try to cull you down, because you've got way more models than they do to get through. So if you can cut down the number of models that they have by 2, or the attacks that they have by 2, suddenly you're putting yourself at a better advantage to go and charge into them, which is kind of interesting. And it's specifically a model, so that's really designed if you want to go character hunting with these Howling Banshees, which, I mean, they're pretty good for it, I think. So, just it's an interesting way to run them at that point. And at that point, you're choosing to run them that way. You can also add 1 Whirling Blades, add 1 to the attacks characteristic for this unit's Howling Banshee Exarch. This Howling Banshee Exarch is equipped with Mirror Swords, add 2 to its attacks characteristic instead. So again, if you're specifically looking to make your Exarch into a blender, that's a good way to go about it. And again, that would be the choosing. So if you got them with Mirror Blades, you're not going to give them the one that lets them use their the Executioner with an Executioner. You're gonna want to choose which one you're going to give, and you'll know before you make those decisions. So then you got the Capitaine Strike. When resolving an attack made with a melee weapon by this unit's Howling Banshee Exarch, an unmodified hit roll of 6 inflicts 1 mortal wound on the target in addition to any normal damage, which is pretty cool. Extra mortal wounds are always fun to have. And then you've got Nerve Shredding Shrieks. When this unit finishes a charge move, if it includes a Howling Banshee Exarch, you can select one enemy unit within 1 inch of this unit and roll 1d6. On a 4+, the enemy unit suffers d3 mortal wounds. That's pretty cool. So you just run them in there, you check it, and a 50-50 chance of doing d3 mortal wounds to them. So again, if you're looking for character hunting, you can choose one of those and go with it. There's also, each and every single one of these has a stratagem that comes with it, 1 CP stratagem, and use the stratagem before the battle. When you select a Howling Banshee Exarch power from the list opposite, you can take that ability in addition to the War Shout ability instead of replacing it. You can only use the stratagem once per battle. So essentially, if you've got the 1 unit of Howling Banshees and you're like, I really want to try to keep them alive more, that -1 to hit is really helpful, but I also want to give d3 mortal wounds to the units I'm charging into, or you're like, I'm specifically going character hunting, so I want to take down the number of attacks they have. You can spend 1 CP and you'll get both abilities. So that really busts up the Exarch, the Aspect Warriors there for that. And every single one of the Aspect Warriors have the ability and have the ability to keep the power that gets replaced. So let's kind of go over the other ones that we have here. That was just showing that one because I happened to have, it was easy enough to show you the rules there. So for Fire Dragons, from this army contains an Fire Dragon Exarch. You can replace Crack Shot ability with the units from the units data sheet with one of the Fire Dragon abilities opposite. So then you've got Dragon's Bite. Whilst this unit contains a Fire Dragon Exarch, at the start of your shooting phase, you can change the type characteristics of these units' fusion guns to Pistol 1 until the end of that phase. Which is pretty cool. So suddenly you know someone comes up, it doesn't want to charge into you because they're afraid of the Melta shots that are going to be coming at you from the Fire Dragons, and so they consolidate into you at the end of the fight phase. Now on your turn, during your shooting phase, you don't have to back out to really make use of them. Now you just get to shoot those weapons with pistol instead, which is pretty freaking good. So then you've got Tent Killer. When resolving an attack made with a Fire Pike by this unit's Fire Dragon Exarch against a vehicle unit, you can reroll 1d6 when making the damage roll. So if you roll that and suddenly you roll double ones, which happens to me all the freaking time when I'm running with my Melta, you get to reroll one of those dice and try to get it better. So you're less stuck with those kind of situations where it's like, 2d6, take the highest, and you're like, all right, well, the highest is 1. And on this weapon that I had to really work to get that shot in. So now you can just go and be like, all right, well, I'm going to reroll one of those and try to get higher. You could probably still roll a 1. I would probably still roll a 1. But the odds are definitely better than before having that ability. So then you've got Burning Fists. Melee weapons that this unit's Fire Dragon Exarch is equipped with have an armor penetration characteristic of -2 and a damage characteristic of 2. When resolving an attack made with a melee weapon by this unit's Fire Dragon Exarch, you can reroll the wound rolls. So rerolling wound rolls, you've got AP -2 and a damage of 2. So, I know that they're not the best in close combat, but you could also take that maybe in addition to the crack shot to allow them, if they end up in close combat. And it's basically those like the first one and the second on this third one here are really good in case the units consolidate into you trying to keep you from shooting. So you can either hopefully take them down with that ability, or so before you get to go into your movement phase and then be free to do what you want to do, or you can have your weapons shoot at them in the shooting phase afterwards and make them think about whether or not they actually want to consolidate into you, or actually just shoot them if they do. Then you got Swift Step. Whilst this unit contains a Fire Dragon Exarch, when this unit advances, you can roll 3d6 and discard 2 of the results. So it's 3d6, take the highest for advances, which is pretty good. Get them into place where they need to get them into Melta range or whatever. You've got Wall of Fire. When this unit fires Overwatch, a Fire Dragon Exarch in this unit equipped with a Dragon's Breath Flamer can make a Wall of Fire attack. If he does so, instead of shooting with that model, roll 1d6. On a 2+, the charging unit suffers D3 mortal wounds. D3 mortal wounds. So you don't even have to roll a wound after it, even though it's auto hits. You don't have to roll a wound. They don't get an armor save or an invul save. Mortal wounds. In Overwatch, which is pretty cool. So it's a 2+, and it's not even a 6+. It's a 2+. You're doing D3 mortal wounds, which is pretty awesome. And then it says when this unit fires Overwatch, a Fire Dragon Exarch in this unit equipped with a Dragon's Breath Flamer can make a Wall of Fire attack. If he does so, instead of shooting with that model, roll 1d6. So it's not even, you don't even need the range anymore. So say they're charging into you and they're out of flamer range, which you would usually get the d6 auto hits on there. You just roll that 2+ instead now, and they're going to take D3 mortal wounds, which is pretty good. So I guess if like a horde of guys is charging into you, you still may, if they're within range for the flamer, you can still use the flamer. It doesn't say you don't have to. You can't. It just says that you can instead do this. So say they're charging from 8.5 inches away, you can roll with this and give D3 mortal wounds, which is better than nothing. Or if something stronger is coming at you, like a Space Marine character or something like that, or even just Space Marines, and you're like, my flamer, I don't know what I'm going to be able to do with it, but you can just be like, all right, on a 2+, I'm doing D3 mortal wounds to you. It goes through everything they got there, which is cool. And then you got Burning Heat. Whilst this unit contains a Fire Dragon Exarch, when resolving an attack made with a melee weapon against this unit, subtract 1 from the hit rolls, which is pretty cool. Whilst this unit contains a Fire Dragon Exarch, when resolving an attack made with a melee weapon against this unit, subtract 1 from the hit roll. So it's basically they get the ability that the Howling Banshees have, which is pretty cool. So, but instead it's burning heat instead of screaming in their face. And again, you can take that, and you can also keep the crack shot ability for 1 CP, which is pretty interesting. And again, like all these powers, which I find really interesting and cool, is that it's just giving you more options, which is fun, as opposed to necessarily making them OP or like the really becoming something that's just like unhandleable. What they do is they give you more options for running what you want to do, and give you the ability to then make decisions on how you want to run them, as opposed to being stuck with what they've got, which is kind of cool. And I think it's really interesting to have that. So we got Dire Avengers. Again, you're going to be replacing Battle Fortune with them. So you've got Bladestorm. Whilst this unit contains a Dire Avenger Exarch, when resolving an attack made with a ranged weapon that does not have the grenade type by a model in this unit, an unmodified hit roll of 6 scores 1 additional hit, which is pretty cool. Especially whilst this unit Dire Avenger Exarch attack made with a ranged weapon that does not have the grenade type. So, you put a big blob of dire Avengers out there with, with a shuriken or something like that. They're going to do a pretty good number on you, getting a couple sixes in there. Then you've got defend. Whilst this unit contains a dire Avenger Exarch, when resolving an attack made with a melee weapon against this unit, subtract 1 from the wound roll. From the wound roll as opposed to the hit roll, which is kind of interesting there. So it's, makes them a little bit tougher there. So you're looking at tough 3, so Marines would be wounding them on 3s. Now they're going to be wounding them on 4s again, which is pretty cool. Puts them, it's almost if you're bumping up their toughness a little bit. But actually, it works even better if it's strength 5. You're still wounding you on 4s, so it's almost like you got a T4 for that point, which is kind of interesting. Stand firm. Whilst this unit contains a dire Avenger Exarch, when a morale test is taken for this unit, do not roll the dice. It is automatically passed. So auto-passing morale, which is pretty cool for like large blobs that you want to try to get up there and just kind of like choke things out, which is fun. You've got Martial Adept. The unit's dire Avenger Exarch has a weapon skill and ballistic skill characteristic of 2+. Pretty cool. Dire Avenger's Shredding Fire. Ranged weapons that do not have the grenade type that this unit's dire Avenger Exarch is equipped with have an armor penetration characteristic of -3, and its abilities text reads dash. So it just takes away any minus to hit if you're going in there. I'm not sure exactly what they got there, but that's kind of an interesting, probably very specific thing that you're looking to do with that. So like heavy weapon, I guess if you're going with a heavy weapon, you don't have. Well, no, I wouldn't change that. I'm not sure what that's about. Avenging Strikes. Whilst this unit contains a dire Avenger Exarch, and any models from this unit have been destroyed, when resolving an attack made by a model in this unit, add 1 to hit rolls and wound rolls. So if you lose one guy in that unit, you're now getting +1 to hit and +1 to wound, which is pretty fun. It just makes them really hit back or even stronger after you even use them there. Dark Reapers, you're going to be replacing Crack Shot with these guys again. So you got Rapid Shot. When this unit's Dark Reaper Exarch shoots, add 1 to the number of attacks made with that model's ranged weapon, which is pretty cool. Rain of Death. When this unit's Dark Reaper Exarch shoots with a Tempest launcher, you can re-roll the dice to determine the number of attacks made. Number of times I've faced off against people with Dark Reapers, and suddenly their Exarch rolls like a 1 or a 2 for the number of shots, and it really hurts. So this gives you the ability to not have to face that, which is pretty fun. And then you've got over here, you've got Grim Visage. Whilst this unit contains a Dark Reaper Exarch, subtract 1 from the leadership characteristic of enemy units whilst they're within 6 inches of this unit. You probably don't want enemy units within 6 inches of them. Not sure. I don't think that's probably one of the better ones. You got Long Range Fire. Whilst this unit contains a Dark Reaper Exarch, add 6 to the ranged characteristic of ranged weapons models in this unit are equipped with. So giving them +6 inches to the range after Dark Reaper's already doing what they're doing, which is pretty cool. Then Deadly Touch. When resolving an attack made with a melee weapon by this unit's Dark Reaper Exarch, an unmodified wound roll of 6 inflicts 2 mortal wounds on the target in addition to any other damage. So again, that's basically just trying to hedge your bets in case you get charged, because one of the best ways to take care of Dark Reapers is to get them into combat. But if you get into combat with that, now all of a sudden your dude bro there is going to be able to do 2 mortal wounds on a wound roll of a 6, which is fun. Focus Fire. When this unit is chosen to shoot with, this unit's Dark Reaper Exarch can target a character unit, even if it is not the closest enemy unit, so long as the target is within 18 inches of that Dark Reaper Exarch. So it means you have to get a little closer than you normally would with Dark Reapers, but now you can suddenly go character hunting with them, which is pretty fun, because their weapons are, they're Dark Reaper weapons, so pretty good. Howling Banshees, already went over them. Swooping Hawks here. You're going to be replacing Herald of Victory with this ability. So you've got Intercept, which is whilst this unit contains a Swooping Hawk Exarch, when resolving an attack made by a model in this unit against an enemy unit that can fly, you can re-roll the hit roll. So re-rolling hit rolls against fly units, which is pretty fun, especially against the new Space Marine meta with with repulsors. I'm not sure that you would really necessarily want to charge in with Swooping Hawks, maybe. But you can. Or if you want to take out the fly, or if you end up having to just charge down flyers or something like that, you can do that, which is kind of interesting. Because I think that a lot of things with fly you're going to see a lot more with the marine stuff, bringing them out. Suppressing Fire. When this unit's Swooping Hawk Exarch fires Overwatch at an enemy unit, subtract 2 from charge rolls made for that unit until the end of the phase. So keeping you from getting charged yourself, which is pretty fun. -2 to charge roll is Always a pain in the butt to handle with. As a Genestealer Cult player, I will tell you, I'm not a fan of that. So this will make it harder for me to get off that charge into you. Vade, whilst this unit contains a Swooping Hawk Exarch, models in this unit have a 5+ invul save. Pretty good. That's actually really good. And a 5+ invul save is always fun. You pay a lot of points for that when you're taking Terminator, so pretty interesting to get that. Then you've got Rapid Assault. If this unit made a charge move or was charged this turn, add 2 to the attacks characteristic of this unit's Swooping Hawk Exarch this turn. Ranged weapons this unit Swooping Hawk Exarch is equipped with. This is Fast Shot. Ranged weapons this unit Swooping Hawk Exarch is equipped with have a type characteristic of Assault 6, which is pretty cool. And then you got Swooping Barrage. Whilst this unit contains a Swooping Hawk Exarch, add 1 to rolls made for this unit's Swooping Hawk Grenade Pack ability. That's pretty good. Not bad. Again, like I said, all of these, these are just getting added onto the regular unit or aspect warrior units here. So they're not meant to be like game breaking, and I think it just gives you a little bit more versatility in running these guys however you want to, which is fun. You got Striking Scorpions here. Stalker, whilst this unit contains a Striking Scorpion Exarch and is wholly on or within a terrain feature, when resolving an attack made with a ranged weapon against this unit, subtract 1 from the hit roll. So -1 to hit against them while they're in cover, which is pretty cool. Crushing Blow, add 2 to the strength characteristic of this unit's Striking Scorpion Exarch, that's pretty brutal there. Scorpion's Grasp, when resolving an attack made with a Scorpion Claw by this unit's Striking Scorpion Exarch, an unmodified hit roll of 6 inflicts 1 mortal wound on the target in addition to any normal damage. Again, throwing out mortal wounds, which is always fun. Ambush, whilst this unit contains a Striking Scorpion Exarch and is wholly on or within a terrain feature, this unit can always fight first in the fight phase, even if they did not charge. If the enemy has units that have charged or that have similar abilities, then alternate choosing, so back and forth. Pretty good. Always getting to attack first is super beneficial. So especially if your opponent, like a Genestealer Cult, and they made a whole bunch of different charges, they're going to choose one unit, and then you're going to get to attack back with these Striking Scorpions, which means that they're probably going to have to choose you first, which hopefully allows you to save for something else, which is pretty cool. Then you've got, that was Ambush, so Withdraw. At the end of the fight phase, if this unit contains a Striking Scorp Exarch and is within 1 inch of any enemy models, this unit can make a fallback move of up to 6 inches as if it were your movement phase. So it's, you get to fall back out of combat at the end of the fight phase if this unit contains a Striking Scorp Exarch. So say you charge into a unit, manage to survive, and then don't want to end up getting hurt by them, you can make the decision to try to just fight back again. You can make the decision to fall back so that they don't get another turn to fight against you. It's at the end of the phase, so they will have that 1 round to attack you, but they won't have another round to attack you, which is, I think, an interesting benefit there. And then you've got Scorpion's Sting, or you can do it if you get consolidated into, you get to attack them, and at the end of the phase, back out so you're not held to being wrapped up there, which is kind of interesting. And then Scorpion Sting, while this unit contains a Striking Scorpion Exarch, add 1 to rolls made for that unit's Mandiblaster ability, which is kind of an interesting thing there. And then going into the Shining Spears, they are going to be replacing the Expert Hunter ability, and they've got Withdraw at the end of the fight phase. If this unit contains a Shining Spear Exarch and is within 1 inch of any enemy models, this unit can make a fallback move of up to 6 inches as if it were the movement phase. So again, getting out of combat with Shining Spears if you want to shoot with them, which is a pretty good idea. Swooping Dive, whilst this unit contains a Shining Spear Exarch, when a charge roll is made for this unit, add 1 to that result. +1 to charge is very good. That's why I run a lot of my Cult to the Four-Armed Emperor, because of that ability there. Blademaster, Paragon Saber, that this unit's Shining Spear Exarch is equipped with, has a damage characteristic of 3. Not bad. Suddenly his Paragon Saber now has the damage of a Thunderhammer, which is pretty cool. Lancer, when resolving an attack made with a Laser Lance or Star Lance by the unit's Shining Spear Exarch, an unmodified hit roll of 6 scores 1 additional hit. Those are always fun. This unit's Shining Spear Exarch has a 3+ invulnerable save against attacks made with ranged weapons. Keeping you alive is always fun. And then when resolving an attack made with a melee weapon by this unit's Shining Spear Exarch, An unmodified hit roll of 6 inflicts 1 mortal wound on the target in addition to any normal damage. Unmodified hit roll of 6 inflicts 1 mortal wound, which is pretty cool. So that Shining Spear is always a pain in my butt, but it's good to see them keeping alive. Then you got Crimson Hunters as well. So Crimson Hunter Exarchs giving you the ability to do here. When resolving an attack made with a ranged weapon by this model's... You're replacing... What are you replacing? Marksman's Eye with this. So when resolving an attack made with a ranged weapon by this model against a unit that can fly, add 1 to the damage characteristic of that weapon for that attack. Then you've got Evade. This unit has a 5+ invulnerable save. Always fun, especially on flyers. This model does not... Hawkeye. This model does not suffer the penalty for moving and firing heavy weapons. Also pretty good, since they're going to be zip-zoning around. You've got Strafing Assault. When resolving an attack made with a ranged weapon by this model against a unit that cannot fly, reroll a wound roll of 1. So it depends if you're attacking other flyers or if you want to attack ground units. Then you've got Eyes of Cain. When resolving an attack made with a ranged weapon by this model, the target does not receive the benefit of cover to its saving throws. Okay, and then you've got Aerial Maneuvering. When this model moves, you can pivot up to 180 degrees before it moves instead of up to 90 degrees, which is pretty cool. So it allows you to just turn back around. You can just run back and forth, like right across the table, like from end to end, and just keep flipping around and going back, which is pretty cool. I think those are going to be pretty good, especially that aerial procedure, because you know it also has fly. To the damage characters are the repulsors. They have fly, so go ahead. Shoot into some repulsors, you get +1 damage to your weapons, which is pretty cool. So I think that's going to be pretty interesting to see them. And then you've got Warp Spiders. You're replacing Iron Resolve with this. Again, optionally, because you can always spend 1 CP. So Iron Resolve, you can change it to Surprise Assault. Whilst this unit contains a Warp Spider Exarch, when resolving an attack made with a Death Spinner by this model, by a model in this unit, in a turn in which it was set up on the battlefield using the Warp Strike ability, you can reroll the hit roll. So rerolling hit rolls when they drop in, which is pretty cool, and that applies to everybody in there, so not just the Exarch. Withdraw at the end of the fight phase. If this unit contains a Warp Spider Exarch, you can make a fallback move up to 6 inches. So again, getting out of combat with them, which is pretty interesting. Web of Deceit. Once per battle in your movement phase, if this unit contains a Warp Spider Exarch, it can make a warp jump instead of moving normally. Remove this unit from the battlefield, set them up at the end of the phase, anywhere on the battlefield that is more than 9 inches away from any enemy model. So it allows them to deep strike in the middle of a game from the table, which is kind of interesting. Once per game, you can do it, but still pretty interesting for getting to where you need at the end of the turn. So say at the end of turn 6, you need to jump onto an objective. Boop, drop them up and drop them down on that objective, which is pretty interesting. Then you got Spider's Lair. Whilst this unit contains a Warp Spider Exarch and is wholly on or within a terrain feature, when an enemy unit finishes a charge move within 1 inch of this unit, roll 1d6. On a 3+, the enemy unit suffers d3 mortal wounds. So again, makes people think about whether or not they want to charge into your Warp Spiders. You can just have them jump in there, and if they get charged, then on a 3+, so 2/3 of the time, you're going to be doing d3 mortal wounds to them. And then you got Flickering Assault. While this unit contains a Warp Spider Exarch, models in this unit can pile in up to 6 inches instead of 3 inches. So again, after you wipe a unit, you can pile in 6 inches, which is pretty cool. And then Spider's Bite. Power Blades. This unit's Warp Spider Exarch is equipped with have a strength characteristic of +1 and a damage characteristic of 2. So interesting choices that you have here. I think some are obviously better than others, and the ability to take both the one that you already have plus the new ones, I think will give you a lot of versatility in creating units that are designed to go do a specific purpose, which is, I think, a lot of what these Aspect Warriors are going to be good at for you. So it's fun to see all those options there. Then we've got something interesting here. This is the first time I think I've ever seen it, which is kind of interesting. But they've got a new Psychic table. That's not what's new about it. But what's interesting about it is that you can replace Smite with one of these powers. And so you won't have Smite anymore. You would replace it. But it allows you to have Psychers that can do interesting things. So you've got one of them is Fateful Divergence. Has a warp charge value of 4. If manifested, select one friendly Craftworld unit within 6 inches of this Psyker. Until the start of your next Psychic phase, you can reroll a single hit roll, wound roll, or save roll for that unit. So essentially for a 4+, you get a CP reroll for those specific things for a specific unit. So not bad. You know, you're not. I don't know if it's necessarily worth trading off for mortal wounds, but if you have one specific Psyker that you want to give that to, I think it would be totally worth it. You've got Witch Strike, has a warp charge value of 4 again. If manifests until the start of your next psychic phase, add 2 to the damage characteristic for this psyker's melee weapon. So now those melee the shining spears that are always wounding on 2s are going to be doing 2 additional damage, which is pretty cool for 4 CP. You've got Ghost Walk. Ghost Walk has a warp charge value of 6. If manifested, select one friendly Craftworld unit within 6 inches of the Psyker. Until the start of your next psychic phase, when a charge roll is made for that unit, add 2 to the result. So for warp charge value of 6, you get to add 2 to charge rolls. Always fun to have that kind of ability. Crushing Orb. The Psyker crushes their foe in a sphere of kinetic energy. Crushing Orb has a warp charge value of 4. If manifested like one enemy character unit within 18 inches of and visible to this Psyker, and roll 3d6. For each roll of 5+, that character unit suffers 1 mortal wound. So essentially, it changes it from it's 1 warp charge cheaper than Smite, and it is specifically against characters, and you have to roll a 5+ on that, but it allows you to target characters specifically. So, I mean, again, situational, and you can maybe have a Psyker that you specifically want to go for that, so it'll be interesting. Focus Will has a warp charge value of 6. If manifested, select one friendly Craftworld Psyker model within 6 inches of this Psyker, so it could be himself. Until the end of this phase, when a Deny the Witch test is taken for that model, add 2 to the total. Add 2 to the total. Until the end of this phase, when a Deny the Witch test is taken for that model? I wonder if they mean against his powers? Add 2 to your total? I don't know. That's going to have to be, I think, going to be probably FAQ'd there, just because if it's for when they're making Deny the Witch test, they're not going to do it in the same phase that they cast it. So it'd probably be until the end of until the beginning of their next psychic phase, they'll probably FAQ that. Or if they mean that, they need to clarify if it means that when someone's trying, so you could do it onto another Psyker, and then when they cast, that you add 2 to the total that they need to deny the witch, so make it harder to deny their powers. I don't know. It'll be interesting to see how that one ends up being. Because either which one is pretty cool, but you need to know which it is if you're going to make that call. And then you've got Impair Senses. Warp charge value of 6. If manifested, select one enemy unit within 18 inches of and visible to the Psyker. Until the start of your next psychic phase, when that unit is chosen to shoot with, models in that unit can only target the closest visible enemy unit unless the target of the attack is within 18 inches of the shooting model. That's interesting, because it seems like you could just like really kind of nerf, you choose the Executioner, and now they can only shoot at the closest unit, which you could just have like a blob of whatever in the front there, protecting some of your back stuff. But the Psyker needs to be within 18 inches, and if a unit that they want to target, they can target something outside of 18. They can target something that's not the closest as long as they're within 18 inches. So maybe if you run the Psyker up there with like a big blob of chaff, and you click it on like their Castellan robot or something, or the Castellan, not robot, the Castellan Knight, suddenly that Knight can't shoot at your flyers, can't shoot at your Wave Serpents in the back row that are protecting or causing havoc. Now he has to shoot at like this big chaff of infantry, which it may be able to kill, but that's who it's going to have to shoot at, which is interesting. So it's again situational. I think a lot of these are situational. You'd have to really balance whether it's worth losing Smite to do, but again, just having versatility, which is pretty cool. And now this is the Craftworld attributes. So this is kind of the same thing that the Space Marines got in their main Codex Space Marines. So not the supplements, the main Codex. This allows you to create essentially subsects of Craftworlds. And again, you get to choose 2 unless specifically stated. And they've got some pretty cool powers here, which can make for some interesting Craftworlds that you might want to run. So we've got Children of Cain. When resolving an attack made with a melee weapon by an Aspect Warrior model with this attribute, on an unmodified wound roll of 6, add 1 to the damage characteristic of that weapon for that attack. So 6s do extra damage, which is always fun, especially if you're running a lot of Aspect Warriors. That might be something to keep in mind for that. And it has to be melee weapons, so you're going to want to be the ones that are going to be close combat. So like Howling Banshees would be a good, if you have a bunch of Howling Banshees, that might be an interesting one to roll there. You got Children of Moraheg. When resolving an attack made by a model with this attribute in a unit in which at least half its starting number of models has been destroyed, add 1 to the hit roll. For the purpose of this attribute, destroyed models returned to a unit with this attribute are still considered to have been destroyed. I'm not sure if I necessarily... I mean, as a Dark Angel player, I guess this sounds kind of hypocritical for me, but I'm not liking the that it only comes in handy when you're getting hurt. I like things that just kind of work all the time, which is, that may be just me, but especially as a Dark Angels player, that's one of my big gripes, I think, about our power, is that you only lose the one guy to morale test, which is helpful, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it's the only thing. So I don't know about that one. I got Children of Prophecy. When a psychic test is taken for a model with this attribute, each individual dice roll of 1 is treated as a 2. So which is kind of interesting. So if you roll that 6 and you roll the 1, so now it's actually going to be an 8 instead of a 7. It bumps you up maybe 1. I don't know. It's, again, situational. And again, you get to choose 2, so maybe if you're running Psyker heavy, it might be worth it for you to get that with some of these other ones. Children of the Open Skies. When a unit with this attribute that can fly advances, add an additional 2 inches to the move characteristic of models in that unit until the end of the phase. So plus 2 inches to your charges, advances, which is not bad if you're running around a bunch of flyers trying to keep board blocking with them, which is kind of interesting. Diviners of Fate, model with this attribute, have a 6+ invul save. That's pretty good. 6+ invul save against. There's a lot of AP out there, so having that 6+ invul save is probably pretty handy. Then you've got Expert Crafters. When a unit with this ability fires Overwatch or is chosen to shoot or fight with, you can reroll a single hit roll and you can reroll a single wound roll. So each unit gets to reroll a single hit roll and wound roll in the shooting phase, the fight phase, and in Overwatch, which is pretty interesting. And it's when it fires Overwatch, it can choose to fire a single one. So if the unit doesn't make it into combat and then is not engaged and they get charged again, you get to use it. So it's not per phase. It's specifically each time it's chosen to fire, choose to shoot, or to fight with. So each time it gets to do it. So if you get to attack twice, you get to use it again. So it's not once per phase, which is interesting. Grim, when a morale test is taken for a unit with this attribute, you can reroll the dice. So it gives them, and they shall know no fear ability, basically gives them marine powers there. Hail of Doom, when resolving an attack made with a shuriken weapon by a model with this attribute against an enemy unit within 12 inches of that model, improve the armor penetration characteristics of that weapon by 1. This does not affect the abilities of that shuriken weapon, i.e. a wound roll of 6+ is still resolved at AP -3. So it doesn't make it AP -4 on a 6+, but it still gives them AP -1 for regular attacks there within 12 inches, which is pretty cool. Can make them really, really pretty brutal, especially with some of the other stuff that they have that you can change, like with some of the aspect warriors there with them. I think it'd be kind of interesting to see how they go. And then it just says what a shuriken model is, or shuriken weapon is. Then you've got Headstrong. When a charge roll is made for a unit with this attribute, add 1 to the result. Oof, that's nice. I wish I had that for Cult of the Four-Armed Emperor. You just basically get that, but only when you come in from reserves. So it'd be interesting to have that all the time. I would be super happy to have that for them. Hunters of the Ancient Relics, add 1 to the attacks characteristic of models with this attribute whilst their unit is within 3 inches of any objective markers. That's not bad, holding on to that. Martial Citizenry, when resolving an attack made by a Guardian model with this attribute, reroll a hit roll of 1. Okay, so rerolling 1s for Guardians, which is pretty good. And it's an attack, so it would be close and ranged. Masterful Shot, when resolving an attack made by a model with this attribute, the target does not receive the benefit of cover to its saving throw, so ignoring cover, which is always fun, especially if you're going against something like a Gene Stealer Colt or Guard or something like that doesn't have a lot of saves, or Orcs. Taking away their cover save is always fun. And also works against things like Scouts with camo cloaks, because now, as opposed to having a 2-up, they're back down to a 4-up armor save. Because they don't get the cover, so it takes away that +1 from the cloaks. Masters of Concealment, when resolving an attack made with a ranged weapon against a unit with this attribute by a model that is more than 12 inches away, that unit is treated as having the benefit of cover to its saving throw. So they're getting away from the -1 to hit now, and now it's back into cover now that you get for being 12 inches away, which is pretty interesting. More. So there's a ton of them that you get to choose from, which is pretty cool. Mobile fighters, when resolving an attack made by a model with this attribute in a turn in which that model's unit disembarked from a transport, reroll a hit roll of 1. Savage blades, when resolving an attack made with a melee weapon by a model with this attribute in a turn in which that model's unit made a charge move, was charged, or performed a heroic intervention, reroll a hit roll of 1, which is pretty cool. So it's rerolling ones when they were charged or charged, which is pretty cool. You've got Strike and Fade. If you select this Craftworld attribute, you cannot select a second, so it's only one for Strike and Fade. Units with this attribute can charge during a turn in which they fell back, which is pretty helpful, which is pretty good. So you get to fall back, especially if you've got a unit that has fly or something like that. They can fall back, shoot, and then charge. When a model with this attribute, or fall back, let other people shoot them, and then charge back in if they're not, finished there. And then when a model with this attribute that is not within 3 inches of any enemy units makes a consolidation move, it does not have to end that move closer to the nearest enemy model. So essentially, you could run up if you kill the unit and you're more than 3 inches away from any other enemy units. You can just pop back away from the enemy into cover or around a corner, something to hide yourself from getting the shot at the next turn, which is interesting. You've got Students of Vol at the start of your turn. Each vehicle model with this attribute regains 1 lost wound. Pretty good. Superior Shurikens. Add 4 inches to the range characteristic of Shuriken weapons models with this attribute are equipped with. So you combine that with some of the other ones that you've gotten here, and suddenly Shuriken weapons are just, devastating, which is pretty cool. Vengeful Blades. And then it goes through a Shuriken weapon is any weapon is profile, blah, blah, blah. Whilst Vengeful Blades, when resolving an attack made with a melee weapon by a model with this attribute against a Chaos unit in a turn in which the model's unit made a charge, was charged, heroic intervention, you can reroll the hit roll, which is pretty cool. So all rerolls against Chaos there, which is fun. Warding Runes, when a model with this attribute would lose a wound as a result of a mortal wound, roll 1d6. On a 5+, that wound is not lost. So 5+, feel no pain, always fun. Webway Warriors, the Webway Strike Stratagem, can be used 1 additional time per battle for each detachment, excluding auxiliary support detachment, in your army that contains units with this attribute. The second and any subsequent use of this stratagem can only be used to set up units with this ability in the Webway. So pretty cool. You can deep strike more people. Wrath of the Dead. When resolving an attack made by a Wraith construct with this attribute, reroll a wound roll of 1. So rerolling ones to wound, which is pretty cool there. So that was the Craftworld. Now we're on to the Dark Kin, the Drukhari, going over their stuff here. So again, they've got Drazar gets a new profile, as do Incubi. Incubi, I think, are the same price. I checked it out there. They look like they've got the same thing. Again, name generator, always fun. Drazar here, he's got all of the ability. I think these have all been talked about on the Warhammer community page. You can talk about his different abilities there. He seems like he'd be a pretty good beast as well, getting in there and doing his all his business. So again, he's got a 2+ save, and he's got 6 wounds, 4 attacks. So I think he's going to be pretty beastly. You've got the ability with his Executioner Demiclaves to choose kind of how you want to attack. So if you've got bear fights with the dual blades, you can make 2 additional attacks on this weapon, but it's strength user versus strength +1. He's strength 4, so if you need that strength 5 to wound on 3s, or if you need strength 5 to wound on 4s, you can give the +1 there, but you're going to lose 2 attacks there. So I think, and it's AP -2 versus -3, but the same 2 damage for both of them. So which is pretty cool. And he's got some abilities that buff, like Master of Blades, add 1 to wound rolls for friendly Incubi units whilst they are within 6 inches of this model. So pretty cool. I think he's going to be a fun one, and the new model looks freaking sweet. They really knocked it out of the park with the new models that they've done here so between the Incubi and the Aspect Warriors and the Howling Banshees that they've got in that box set. They look really, really super cool. So again, the Incubi here, again, they've got, I think there are a few changes, but again, those have gone over with Warhammer community. But they're pretty cool, and I think they're always going to be fun. And I think any Dark Kin players out there are going to be happy to have them there. So now we're going to go over the obsessions here. So it's the same thing as the, again, your chapter tactics that you get to have for them, and you can choose Again, you get to choose 2, and they've got specific ones for Cabal, for Witch Cult, and for Homunculus that you get to choose from with the different ones. So you've got Dark Mirth here for the Cabal Obsession. Subtract 1 from the leadership characteristics of enemy units whilst they are within 6 inches of any units from your army. With this obsession, the first time an enemy unit fails a morale test in a battle, add 1 to the leadership characteristic of models from your army with this obsession until the end of the battle. So -1 within 6, and then you get +1 to your own leadership if they fail. You got Deadly Deceivers. Units with this obsession can charge in a turn in which they fell back. Again, pretty fun. When an enemy unit finishes a charge move within 1 inch of any units from this obsession, roll 1d6. On a 6, that unit suffers 1 mortal wound. That's pretty cool. I just want to make sure. Chosen. So describes how they're chosen here. Units. One of these abilities is if you're a chosen Cabal, respectively, unless otherwise stated, you choose. You have two obsessions. So again, I just wanted to make sure because these are pretty cool. Fall back and giving on a 6 on a d6, you suffer. They give a mortal wound when they charge into you. Disdain of Lesser Beings. When a morale test is taken for a unit with this obsession, no more than 1 model can flee. So it's the same thing as the Dark Angels have. The ability there. Then you got Meticulous Flares. Units with this obsession that have the Power from Pain ability always benefit from the Eager to Flay bonus. So you can check that out. Even during the first battle round, which is fun. When resolving an attack made with a melee weapon by a model with this obsession against a unit that is not a vehicle or Titanic, an unmodified hit roll of 6 automatically scores. An unmodified hit roll of 6 automatically scores a hit and successfully wounds the target. Do not make a wound roll. So anything that's not a vehicle or Titanic, you get to do auto wounds on 6s. Auto hits and auto wounds. So then you got Mobile Raider. This Cabal, add 3 inches to the move characteristic of models with this obsession that can fly, so +3 to all of your vehicles, which is pretty fun. You've got Soulbound. When a inured to suffering roll is made for a model with this obsession, reroll a roll of 1. Units with this obsession that do not have the Power from Pain ability instead gain the inured to suffering bonus, which is pretty cool. So they get that ability even if they don't have the Power from Pain. You've got Toxin Crafters. When resolving an attack made with a poison weapon by a model with this obsession, on an unmodified wound roll of a 6, add 1 to the damage characteristic of that weapon for that attack. This does not apply to artifacts of cruelty. For the purposes of this obsession, a poison weapon is any weapon that has a poison ability, weapon ability, and then you can check which ones have that. So it's not an artifact of cruelty, it just, all the other ones, they can do it. You got Webway Raiders. Webway Portal Stratagem can be used 1 additional time, blah, blah, blah. The same one as the Craftworld have the ability. So that's the Cabal obsessions that you've got there. Then we can go into the Witch Cult obsessions. We've got Acrobatic Display. If you select the Witch Cult obsession, you cannot select a second. So it's so if you choose Acrobatic Display, this is the only one you get. Whilst a model with this obsession that has an invulnerable save is within 1 inch of any enemy units, improve its invulnerable save by 1 to a maximum of 3+. Whilst a model with this obsession that does not have an invulnerable save is within 1 inch of any enemy units, it has a 6+ invul save. So increasing invul saves by 1 and giving invul saves whilst they're within close combat, essentially. The Art of Pain. Whilst units with this obsession that have the Power from Pain ability are within 1 inch of any enemy units, they treat the current battle round as being 1 higher than it actually is when determining what bonuses they gain from this ability. So again, if you're in close combat, you get +1 to the table there for Power for Pain. Berserk Fugue. When resolving an attack made with a melee weapon by a model with this obsession that made a charge move, was charged, or performed heroic intervention this turn, an unmodified hit roll of 6 scores 1 additional hit. You cannot select this obsession if you have already selected the Precise Killer's obsession. So, moving into Precise Killer's obsession, when resolving an attack made with a melee weapon by a model with this obsession, on an unmodified wound roll of 6, improve the armor penetration of that weapon by 1 for that attack. You cannot select this obsession if you got the Berserker Fugue obsession. So 6s to hit score 1 additional hit for Berserker Fugue, and wound rolls of 6 improve the armor penetration. So you can't double it up there, giving yourself like a whole bunch of other stuff. So you got to choose either one if you want to choose those ones. You've got Slashing Impact. After a model with this obsession finishes a charge move, you can select one enemy infantry, biker, or monster unit within 1 inch of it and roll 1d6. On a 5+, that enemy unit suffers 1 mortal wound. So on a 5+, it does 1 mortal wound to specific things. I'm not so sure about that one. Mortal wounds are never anything to shy away from, but at the same time, I think you've got some other better abilities here. Stimulant Innovators. When the Hyperstim Backlash Stratagem is used on a unit with this obsession, it only costs 1 command point instead of 2, so that's pretty cool. Test of Skill. When resolving an attack made by a model with this obsession against a monster or vehicle unit in which any models have a wounds characteristic of 10 or more, add 1 to the wound roll. So that's pretty cool. So now they're giving +1 to wound against anything with 10 or more wounds. So if you get into combat with those executioners again, you get +1 to the wound roll, which is pretty fun. When your opponent, and then Trophy Takers, when your opponent makes a morale test for a unit in which any models were destroyed as a result of an attack made with a melee weapon by a model with this obsession this turn, they must roll 2d6 and discard the lowest result. If both results are the same, discard either of them. So when making an opponent makes rolls, unit in which any models are destroyed as a result of an attack made by a melee weapon in this model is obsession, they must roll 2d6 and discard the lowest. Both results the same, discard either of them. So basically you just have to discard like 2d6 for morale, discard the lowest. So if they roll a 6 and a 1, they got to go with that 6. So I don't know, it's interesting. Makes people run away more. It's more so I think if you're going to run into big hordes with lower leadership that you're looking to get those attacks in and make the rest of them run away, that'd be kind of interesting to take that. So again, specifically, you would kind of have to know what you're getting into. So I don't know, less so against like Marines or anything like that, I would think. So you got a Homunculus Coven obsessions now. So again, it's still Drukhari is still parted out the same way. So you've still got the witch cults and the homunculus and the cabals and stuff like that. But they've each got their abilities to choose different chapter tactics, which is kind of cool. If you select this Homunculus Coven obsession, you cannot select a second. When resolving an attack against a unit with this obsession, subtract 1 from the damage characteristic of the weapon, making that attack to a minimum of 1. So that's kind of cool. So when resolving an attack against this unit, so it's now all of a sudden all of those the 2 wound bolters that Marines are getting now are just going to be 1 wound again. So pretty cool there. Minimum of 1, but it's not bad. You know, it helps you get across the board without being shot to death before you get there. Especially with a lot of like the bigger stuff that you can run on those Homunculus Covens. That was Artists of the Flesh. And then you've got Dark Harvest. After a unit with this obsession finishes a charge move, for each model in that unit, you can select charge move. For each model in that unit, you can select one enemy unit within 1 inch of that model and roll 1d6. On a 5+, that enemy unit suffers 1 mortal wound. So for each model you get in there, you get to do that, which is pretty interesting. Then you've got Dark Technomancers. When a unit with this obsession fires Overwatch, or is chosen to shoot with, or you can choose to enhance any or all of the ranged weapons models in that unit are equipped with. If you do, until the end of the phase when resolving an attack made with this weapon, add 1 to the wound roll and add 1 to the damage characteristics of that weapon for the attack. If any unmodified wound rolls of 1 are made for attacks with an enhanced weapon, the firing model suffers 1 mortal wound after shooting with that weapon. So it basically, supercharges your weapon, but you suffer mortal wounds instead of dying, which is pretty cool. Then you got Experimental Creations. Add 1 to the strength characteristic of all models with this obsession. When resolving an attack made with a poison weapon by a model with this obsession against a unit that has a lower toughness characteristic than the attacking model, add 1 to the wound roll. For the purposes of this obsession, a poison weapon is blah, blah, blah. It goes through what poison weapons are. So that's pretty cool. I like that one. Then you got Hunger for Flesh. When a charge roll is made for a unit with this obsession, add 1 to the result. Masters of Mutagens. When resolving an attack made with a poison weapon by a model with this obsession against a unit that is not a vehicle or titanic, an unmodified hit roll of 6 automatically scores a hit and successfully wounds the target. Do not make a wound roll. This does not apply to artifacts of cruelty for the purposes of this obsession, blah, blah, blah. So when resolving an attack made with a poison weapon by a model with this obsession against a unit that is not a vehicle or titanic, again, unmodified hit rolls of 6 automatically score a hit. So that's pretty cool. Automatically wounding is always fun. Don't have to roll those 2 wound rolls. Then you got Master of Torturers. When the Torturer's craft stratagems is used, it costs 1 instead of 2. And then Obsessive Collectors. When an enemy model is destroyed as a result of an attack made with a melee weapon by a model in a unit from your army with this obsession, you can select one model in that unit to regain up to D3 lost wounds. If the attacking model is a rack, you can instead return up to D3 destroyed models to that unit, placing them on the battlefield and in unit coherency. If the models cannot be placed in this way, they are not returned to the battlefield. So that's pretty cool. Either D3 destroyed models or D3 lost wounds. Not bad at all for a collective. So pretty good stuff here for the Dark Kin as well. And then for the Ynnari, it basically just goes through and gives you all of the rules that the Ynnari had from that came out with the White Dwarf. So it just gives you all of the actual stuff, the way to run these guys now. So if you really want to run Ynnari, you need this book because it's got all of their abilities for the characters. It's got the stat lines for the characters. It's got all of their stratagems that they've got here. It's got their warlord traits and the revenant discipline for their psychic powers. But I don't think it's anything new. They've got the tactical objectives, the relics. So it's basically just allows you to run this. So if you didn't manage to pick up the White Dwarf, you kind of need this for Ynnari, and it gives you there. So then it ends with story there. So it's pretty cool. I think it's a really awesome book. I think it's interesting to see what it does. I think it's going to be interesting to see if they continue with books like this for the rest of the Psychic Awakening, or what it's going to do, because they have said that all of the different factions are going to get abilities, are going to get new rules with Psychic Awakening. So it'll be interesting if it continues along the same lines as this, or if they change it somehow. I'm not sure, but it'll be interesting to see. I think this is an excellent first foray into Psychic Awakening. I'm pretty excited for the whole event to see how it all goes, and I'm interested to see them really push the story forward and show what's going on in this turbulent Imperium that we've got now. So it'll be fun to see how it goes. I think this is going to be a really interesting way. And this book is pretty cool. I think it'll be interesting. I think they've got some great powers and great abilities. I think this is really going to give you a lot more diversity for how you want to run your pointy-eared brethren, both of the Dark or Craftworld variety. And then you've got the Ynnari that you can now run. So, if you missed out on that White Dwarf, I know that's really frustrating when people are like, where are the rules for this? If someone gets in, they're like, oh, this is really cool, I want to run this, but didn't manage to pick up that White Dwarf. Now you've got it in here, which is interesting. So maybe that's how they're going to do that. Like the Assassins, I imagine, might come out in one of these Psychic Awakening books or in Chapter Approved or something like that. So you don't have to really go scrounging for that one White Dwarf to be able to use it. You get to have a book that should be more readily available for you to get the ability to use that. So, but yeah, I'm a super big fan of this. I think it'd be cool. I think it's the thing that I'm most interested in is seeing how the Psychic Awakening was going to be unveiled and what they were going to do with it. So to be able to see that happen is pretty interesting. I think I'm pretty excited for it, and I've heard that everyone should be very excited for what's going to be happening in this. So so far it looks like they are delivering. So again, I don't think that the powers in here are going to be groundbreaking to the point that you're going to have a lot of people on the internet calling for the heads of every pointy-eared brethren out there. But I do think that they will give us the ability. They will give you the ability to run Eldar of whatever preference that you have in the way that they kind of were meant to, in a way that you want to. So it gives you more ability to play with your toys in fun and interesting ways, which is what I think they should be doing. I don't think that all of these supplements should be groundbreaking. I don't think, or should be game breaking. I don't think they should be overpowered. I think they should be exactly what this is, which is giving you new options for how to play, fun and interesting ways to play the game, and giving you the ability to choose different stuff. So the advent of the pick and choose chapter tactics was super cool and super awesome thing that they introduced with the Space Marine Codex. So now having that ability with other factions, specifically in this case with the Craftworld and Drukhari, makes it kind of interesting to see how they're going to be going forward with all of the other factions. So I hope you guys have all enjoyed this. I certainly have. I have been Phil the Glacial Geek as always, and until next time, have fun.